Liz Vice will be at S.O.B's on June 14th. Credit Katrina SorrentinoOur guide to pop and rock shows and the best of live jazz happening this weekend and in the week ahead. Pop. The indie rock stalwarts Deerhoof are returning to New York for 2 festival appearances in 2 different boroughs. On Saturday, the band will be headlining a Northside Festival showcase in Brooklyn with the post-punk rockers Protomartyr. On Monday, they'll help Le Poisson Rouge celebrate its 10th anniversary as part of the LPRX Festival in Manhattan. At both, expect fiercely eclectic, unpredictable rock that can go from artsy pop to noise and back again in the space of a song. On Deerhoof's most recent album, Mountain Moves, a straightforward cover of the staple singers' Freedom Highway coexists easily with the title track's avant-garde improvisations, which feature saxophonist Matana Roberts. Elsewherebrooklyn.com 212-505-3474, LPR.com Topaz Jones at Music Hall of Williamsburg, June 8, 9 p.m. Mr. Jones is among the current wave of hip-hop artists who, like the hitmakers Anderson .Paak and D.R.A.M., have realized that rapping and singing are just 2 sides of a false dichotomy. The Montclair, N.J. native uses his approachable tenor to add irresistible hooks to his polished, funk-inflected beats. All his music is released via his own label, New Funk Academy. He scored a minor hit with the groovy 2016 single, Tropicana. He's looking for a follow-up with his latest, The Parliament-indebted, Cotton Fields, 718-486-5400, Music Hall of Williamsburg.com. New York Brass Band Festival at the McKittrick Hotel, June 10, 4 p.m. New Orleans might be best known for brass bands, but live in New York long enough and you'll see one entertaining tourists in a subway station, if nowhere else. That's the inspiration for the debut edition of this festival, which is designed to pay tribute to the diverse array of brass bands that perform regularly within the city limits. Performances will include Balkan funk from Slavic Soul Party, Mexican banda from La Parrandera Banda La Platera, hip-hop-inspired grooves from the Subwa Busking alums Dramatic Speed and Brass Band, and a second-line parade through the High Line to celebrate New Orleans' tricentennial. 212-904-1880, NYBrassFest.com. Robert Plant and the Sensational Shapeshifters with Sheryl Crow at Forest Hills Stadium, June 13, 6:15 p.m. At 69 years old, the legendary Led Zeppelin frontman can't seem to stay off the road, or out of the recording studio. In 2017, Mr. Plant released the reflective, modern, Carry Fire, his 11th solo album, and is already on his 2nd North American tour supporting the project. For the New York stop, he's joined by Ms. Crow, whose bright, beachy pop rock has recently found a fresh audience that includes some of country music's young stars. Maren Moore cites Ms. Crow as one of her biggest influences, and Casey Musgraves recorded her latest album, Golden Hour, in Ms. Crow's barn. 888-929-7849, ForestHillsStadium.com. Liz Vice at S.O.B's, June 14, 8 p.m. Chance the Rapper and Kanye West may use gospel elements to give their music a reverent lilt, but the genre hasn't had many crossover evangelists since Kirk Franklin's hip-hop bombast brought it to the pop charts in the 1990s. Enter Ms. Vice, whose version of gospel is more rootsy than radio. She has a rich voice that fits easily into her groovy yet understated arrangements. The result recalls the gentle revival of artists like Leon Bridges. Expect a pop cover or 2 alongside her original compositions about salvation and redemption. Smells Like Teen Spirit and No Diggity are both part of her repertoire. 212-243-4940, sobs.com. Lucinda Williams, Steve Earle and Dwight Yoakam at the Beacon Theater, June 13, 8 p.m. They weren't the first to rebuke country music's status quo, but these singular singer-songwriters have been among the most reliable guardians of its more rebellious traditions. The LSD Tour, as it has winkingly been titled, marks the first time Mr. Yoakam, Ms. Williams and Mr. Earl have shared a bill, though their voices are a little more gravelly now than when they first rose to prominence in the 1980s. You'd still be hard-pressed to find a better group for fans of gutsy, heartfelt songwriting and rugged roots music. King Leg opens with reimagined surf rock. 212 to 465 minus 6,500. Beacon. Theater Wise N.Y. Yandel at Madison Square Garden, June 8, 8 p.m. This Puerto Rican duo recorded the only reggaeton album to ever win a Grammy, 2009's Los Extraterrestres, but critical acclaim doesn't explain how Wise and Y Yandel became regulars at Madison Square Garden. That success was the result of their central position in reggaeton's first wave of international stars. Their 2005 single, Ricotta, proved the perfect follow-up to Daddy Yankee's hit, Gasolina, and since then they've collaborated with everyone from Enrique Iglesias to T-Pain. This concert is the pair's first stateside appearance since they officially ended their 5-year hiatus in February, and it's time to proceed. Sunday's Puerto Rican Day Parade. 212 to 465 minus 6,741. MSG.com. Image. Wynton Marsalis, above center, will play his new work, The Ever Funky Lowdown, at Jazz at Lincoln Center throughout the weekend. Credit Brian Harkin for the New York Times. Sarah Elizabeth Charles and Jared Cherner at the Cell Theater, June 9, 9 p.m. Ms. Charles's voice is haunting and ethereal, but her lyrics tend to tackle questions of social justice and contemporary society. That much was clear on Free of Form, her head-turning album from 2017. Here, she debuts a collection of new music written with Mr. Cherner, a pianist. 646 to 861 minus 2,253. thatchelltheater.org. The Ever Funky Lowdown, at Jazz at Lincoln Center, through June 9, 8 p.m. Wynton Marsalis, the trumpeter and Jazz at Lincoln Center's artistic director, recently lit a small firestorm when he suggested that hip-hop was among the greatest threats to the well-being of African Americans. In some ways, he seemed intent on lodging his foot in his mouth, but Mr. Marsalis was aiming at a bigger, more viable point. Anyone who looks at the racial disparities in the present-day United States and doesn't see the need for wholesale social change needs his or her head examined, he said. This weekend, Mr. Marsalis debuts The Ever Funky Lowdown, a suite he wrote for the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra that investigates the country's continuing racial dilemma. The orchestra will be joined by 3 vocalists, 3 dancers and the actor Wendell Pierce. 212 to 721 minus 6,500. Jazz.org. Improv Night at the Stone, June 8, 8:30 p.m. The Stone's regular improv night benefit occurs for the first time in its new space at the New School. These shows feature round-robin exchanges between different groupings of improvisers. It's always a mixed bag. Sometimes these brief conversations never take off, other times, the results are direct and marvelous, and memorable. This week, the electronic musician Jada Tui is the artist-in-residence at the Stone. He will perform here along with the saxophonist John Zorn, who runs the space, and a half-dozen other artists. Thestwanic.com. James Reese Europe World War I Centennial at Symphony Space, June 8, 8 p.m. James Reese Europe was arguably the most important American band leader in the years just before jazz became a national craze. During World War I, leading the 369th Infantry Regiment's Harlem Hellfighters band, he poured ragtime, blues and early jazz influences into an orchestral sound that was equally informed by the marches of John Philip Sousa. The two had been neighbors during Europe's childhood in Washington. The Hellfighters made their first appearance in France in 1918, helping to whet Europe's appetite for jazz. At Symphony Space, Ron Wasserman and his New York Jazz Harmonic Trad Jazz Sextet will celebrate the centennial of this event, playing new arrangements of Europe's music. 212 to 864 minus 5,400. SymphonySpace.org. Eddie Palmieri Salsa Orchestra at Sony Hall, June 14, 8 p.m. 81, Mr. Palmieri is arguably the most respected living musician in Latin jazz, and he still hasn't lost the spark-plug intensity that made him such an electrifying performer in the 1960s and 70s. Back then, his eagerness to blend jazz and soul influences with Afro-Cuban musical traditions helped lead a wave of innovation in salsa. Today his large orchestra performs in a slightly more traditional style, but it still embraces the diverse repertoire that he's amassed over nearly 60 years as a band leader. This concert at the recently opened Sony Hall is part of the Blue Note Jazz Festival. SonahAll.com. Corey Smythe and Peter Evans with Joel Ross and Emmanuel Wilkins at the Jazz Gallery, June 12, 7:30 and 9:30 p.m. Mr. Smythe, a pianist, and Mr. Evans, a trumpeter, are jaw-dropping virtuosos interested in both jazz improvising and new classical exploration. The duo recently released a transfixing album, Weatherbird, which builds on the titular recording by Louis Armstrong and Earl Hines, colliding elements of stride piano and New Orleans jazz with free improvisation and extended technique. At the Jazz Gallery, Mr. Smythe and Mr. Evans will be joined by two slightly younger musicians, the vibraphonist Joel Ross and the saxophonist Emmanuel Wilkins. 646 to 494-3625 Jouts Gallery, N.Y.C. Buster Williams and Something More at Smoke, June 8 to 10, 7, 9 and 10:30 p.m. Since the early 1960s, the bassist Buster Williams has positioned himself comfortably along the divide between swinging hard bop and ecumenical fusion. He performed and recorded with countless jazz greats, from Grant Green to Herbie Hancock to Nancy Wilson, and by now he's reached the level of a luminary himself. This weekend he celebrates the release of a lovely, sneakily inventive album, his first in 10 years. Audacity features 6 originals from Williams, and 1 composition each from the other members of his longtime quartet, the saxophonist Steve Wilson, the pianist George Colligan and the drummer Lenny White. 212-864-6662, SmokeJazz.com. Giovanni Russinello. Editors pick Bowie Symphonic at Rumsey Playfield, June 9, 7 p.m. The very capable hands of Ensemble LPR, a group of inventive musicians devoted to bridging all forms of music, give David Bowie's swan song the orchestral treatment with Maya Beiser as the soloist. The adventurous Ms. Beiser has been called the cello goddess, which is not hyperbole. She summons from her instrument an emotional power so stirring that even the most stoic audience members risk turning into sobbing sacks of flesh. Couple that with the fact that Bowie knowingly crafted Black Star as a farewell to his fans, and it's a fair bet that there'll be nary a dry eye at Summer Stage on Saturday. Bring a hanky. 212 to 505-3474, LPR.com. Danielle Dowling.